Hello everyone and my dear subscribers. I've been very busy lately playing the game, leveling my destroyer and getting beat up by the queen. And as per the many requests from you guys for a paladin guide, I made the character and I'm actually really satisfied with the class that I'm going to invest a little to level it up. So in this video, I'm going to explain about the class Paladin, focusing on the support build for PvE content. I'm not going to cover the DPS Holy Knight or the DPS or the PvP. I can't exactly describe it, but playing mostly DPS classes, there's a strange satisfaction I get from playing a support class occasionally. I kind of feel like I've become a conductor calling out the buffs for my DPS slaves. And by the way, I usually write scripts for my guide videos and dub it, but I'm not gonna do that for this video because there are so many options, skills, tripods, and ways you can go with the class, and a lot of details to cover, so writing a script for this class seemed impossible for me. And because because English isn't my first language, my delivery may get rocky at times. Please understand. Anyhow, this video will go in the order of key skills, skill cycle, skill trees, and engravings. First, the paladin skills are largely divided into two colors, blue, let's get rid of this real quick, the blue skills and the yellow skills. The blue skills use his sword, and the yellow skills basically are spells. And there are 2 key blue skills and 4 key yellow skills. Almost every paladin will equip these skills, and I will now explain why. From the blue skills, this is called the Holy Sword, and it looks like this. So usually it'll do the first dash and then the second sequence will follow up. However, if you don't hit with the first hit, then the second sequence won't follow up. You can change this with the tripods, which I will explain in a little bit. The Holy Sword has strong DPS, it has counter ability, and good impairment as well, so it's kind of all-in-one type of skill. And arguably one of the best counter skills in all of Lost Ark, because if you hit with this, the end of the lightning beam, it will still counter the boss. Even if you use the skill from very far away, it will still counter the boss. Now let's have a look at the tripods for this skill. The first tripod decreases the animation time by 10%, a quicker execution. And the second tripod leaves this on the floor, giving it a little bit of extra damage, but not by a whole lot. And the third tripod will make it dash forward, allowing you to make the successful rate of the skill to hit higher. So I would probably use either the first or the third tripod from the first line, and depending on what kind of raid it is. If you need the extra dash, you can go with this, or if you want quicker execution, you can, or shorter animation, you can choose the first tripod. And in the second line, there is the extra damage to the bosses, raid bosses, and then there is the critical chance increase, and then there is this tripod, which is, even if you miss your first skill, it will still, the second sequence will follow up. So that's what this tripod does. So if you're confident that you will hit the first dash, then and do more extra damage, then use this. But there's gonna be some raids like Beakis where the boss will kind of fly around like a bat and appear out of nowhere for a counter. Then I would use this skill, so you can still, in whichever direction the boss appears, you can use it to counter. And in the third line, there is the one beam version for extra 120% damage, which does more damage than this one. But what this one does is there are 3 lightning beams, and if the boss's counter pattern hits any of these 3 beams, it will counter. So if you need longer duration of the counter, well, it just makes the counter a lot easier. So I think that pretty much covers all the goodies of this skill, and now let's move on to the next. Next important blue skill is the lightning thrusts. This is one of the blue skills with very short skill cool, and mainly used to fill up the identity gauge. And because it's composed of multiple hits, it's good to be used along with any runes which will activate by chances, or the runes which will increase the amount of identity gauge gathered. So in the first line of tripods for the lightning thrusts, I use the shortened skill cool, but you can either use this tripod for more damage on the mobs, or you can use this tripod for a little bit dash forward, but I just use the quicker the shorter skill cool. And I use additional attacks for more thrusts, and I use in the third line I use this tripod. But if you lack the skill points, you can just go with level 7 for this skill, which will make it 300 skill points even, which will make it look like this. It looks kind of similar. Now let's move on to the spells. Like I said earlier, there are 4 important yellow skills, and I'm going to explain them one by one. First, the God's Rage. This is one of the 2 party attack buff skills, and in order for this buff to activate on all of your party members, they just have to be within 24 meters range from you. And 24 meters in this game means this much. From here to here is 24 meters. So unless the party members are out of sight, away from the, somewhere outside the monitor, they're most likely going to get the buff. And for the first line of, the God's Rage, this is what the skill looks like. You can see the buff for 8 seconds. And for the first line of tripods, you can use the increased chance for critical, but this is only for the skill. It's not critical buff on all of your party members or anything. Or you can use this for chaos dungeons maybe, because it does more damage to the mobs. Or you can use the wider AoE with this tripod, but I use this one for a little bit of extra damage. And then I use super armor because I don't want to get cancelled by getting hit by the boss. So I use a super armor tripod. But if you're confident that you don't get hit by the boss, you can either use this tripod for extra identity gauge gathered. This one I think this is for PvP maybe, because it sort of electrifies the enemy for 4 seconds. And it does no good for raid bosses. And then this is the buff tripod, so you have to max out this skill. And now let's look at the Heavenly Blessing, which is this skill. Looks like this. You can see the buff for 8 seconds. For the first line of tripods, if you lack mana in your raids, you can use this tripod. Or you can use this tripod for extra identity gauge, but I use this skill for shorter animation by 10%. And this is the buff tripod, so this is a must. And then this one recovers the mana recovery rate of yourself and your party members. Or you can use this for the wider AoE and increase damage by 300%, which is kind of a lot. So if you... And this is actually one of the major DPS skills of Paladin, so I just use this one. 400,000 damage, which is pretty good for a Paladin. And then there is the Shock of Light, which is this skill. You don't need to max this skill, as the purpose of this skill is in the second line of the tripods. This is a 10% damage increase debuff on the enemy, and this skill has really short cooldown. And the skill cycle of these 3 debuff and buff skills should be used in this order, in my opinion. I'm going to show you the case where I use the the Heavenly Blessing first with the debuff. You can see the 2 damage buffs, and then use the God's Rage with the debuff. And you can see how they're on the same cooldown right now. And they're not coming back for at least 20 seconds. You see how it works? It's not available for 20 seconds. However, if you use the God's Rage first with the debuff skill, this is what the skill cycle looks like. They're on different skill cooldowns, which means they'll become more available to be used along with the debuff for more burst damage. I hope you get the point here. See how they're on different skill cooldowns? And this is why I recommend using, well, I use the God's Rage first along with the debuff skill, because the buff skills just become more available for 2 stacks of buffs. And then there is the shield skill called the Holy Protection, which provides shields to all party members. And then with the 3rd line of the tripod of the Holy Protection, you provide a little bit of heal to your party members when the shield time is over. Whoops. This is the Holy Protection, and when the shield is over, you can see a little bit of HP recovery, and this is effective to all your party members. So what my skill cycle looks like whenever I enter the raid, I will probably use the protection, because that's usually when the raid boss appears out of nowhere for the first attack. So I'll use the protection first, debuff and the buff, and then use whatever skills I have until my debuff comes back. Debuff, buff, use the skills, debuff, use some kind of other skills, debuff, buff, Do some damage. Protection. Whenever it comes back. Debuff. Buff. That's what my skill cycle sort of looks like whenever I enter a raid. And here's where the two different skill trees come into play. If you want to provide more protection to your party members, you can equip the God's Law or the Sacred Area. The tripod would look something like this. This for wider area. I'll show you in a bit why this tripod is important. And the protection skills of Paladin, they're not shields, but they're decrease in damage taken by certain percentage. For the God's Law, it's 70%. And it looks like this. So your party members who are in the area will get the protection of 70%. Whoever's outside the area won't get the protection, and this is very inconvenient. And it's not shield, so it's not full protection, but a decrease in damage taken. And the other damage taken decrease skill would be this one, which looks similar. The party members have to be in this area for damage taken reduction. And the tripod would look something like this. Probably the super armor or the skill cooldown reduced by 2 seconds. And then the protection, but it only reduces the damage taken by 26 or 25%. I have 26 because I have a tripod, one tripod randomly. And then probably wider area for more party members to cover. And it looks like this. It does very little damage to the enemies. There's no buffs, it's just damage reduction for your party members. So a lot of Paladin users don't like to use these two skills. And that is why there's the other skill tree, which is called the 4-4 skill tree. 4-4 skill tree, basically 4 blue skills, 4 yellow skills. And the 4-4 skill tree would look something like this. This skill and the dash skill. Dash because it's only movement skill a Holy Knight has. There's the other one, but then this one, you can use this one for a movement skill, but it's a holding skill and there's a little bit of delay. When you're using it, and it's kind of silly and not very it's not a very simple skill to use. So a lot of people use the dash for you know, if you're away from the enemy and if you want to get close, you can use this skill. Or if you want to dodge an enemy attack, you can use it. And then there's the how should I translate this? The Executor's Sword, which looks like this. Now, this skill has destruction and it's very good. It has decent neutralization, impairment, and this is the in this skill tree and the 4-4 skill tree with the skills I have, this is the only destruction skill. Paladin does not have many destructions in their skills. So how my tripod would look like this. When you successfully hit the enemy with this tripod on, you get a certain movement speed increase. And then I give it extra destruction by 1 level. And then I use the second tripod for this for more damage. This one looks like it's just 2 attacks with less damage, but this one just is 3 attacks with more damage. This is not the best skill tree there is for Paladin, as everyone has different taste, but I believe this is a good starting point, and through your own experiment and experience, you can surely find the best skill tree of your own. I think that pretty much covers the skills, and now let's have a quick look at the stats. The primary stat for Paladin should be agility for faster rotation of skills, and then the specialty for more gauge recovery. And why do I have critical? Because one of the accessories with agility was too expensive, so I just bought a critical accessory. Don't judge me, I have limited gold, and Paladins can have critical too. Moving on to the engravings, the 2 must-haves for Paladins are Awakening and the class engraving Aura of Blessing. The reason why Awakening engraving is important is because the Awakening skills fills your identity gauge by this much, which is a lot. And because the Awakening engraving reduces the cooltime and increases the number of use of Awakening skill in a raid, it basically means more identity skills and more heals for your party members. And at the same time, why the class engraving Aura of Blessing is important is because without this engraving, this is only going to provide the identity skill is only going to provide the 10% buff to your party members in the area without the heal. So without this engraving, it's only buff with no heal. And then I gave him a medical specialist for increased amount of heal and heavy armor, which is just extra protection for me because this is my ult and I don't want to use a whole lot of potions, and because no one can say anything even if I have a heavy armor for a support class. And then one of the class engraving called the Executor. What Executor does, it increases the damage of blue skills by 15%, and it increases the amount of identity gauge recovered by 100% when using the blue skills. So this is more suitable for the 4-4 skill tree. And the reason why I only have level 1 for the Executor is because it increases the damage of the blue skills by 15, 20, 25%, but the amount of identity gauge gathered is same, 100%. And because Paladins are not, they're not a full DPS class, so just getting 1 level of this engraving is cheap, very efficient. And yeah, that's pretty much the reason why I only have 1 level of the Executor. What you can replace from these engravings, I think, is the heavy armor. You can probably replace this with the spirit absorption for quicker movement and attack speed. That pretty much covers the basics of Paladin. The more I use this class, the more I can understand why this class is better for a skilled party, because they just don't provide as much shield as bards. But Paladins are easier to provide more constant buffs throughout the raid. Hope this video provided you with better understanding of the class Paladin, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below as I have excellent reply rate. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time, bye bye.